Hey, what's up, everyone? So, this is going to be the 65th opening, and with the first 64 openings we basically covered all of the basic openings on the perpendicular branch that I like to cover. So, typically in Othello, when we start off with a move such as f5, there are essentially three main branches that white could decide the opening with the most common one being the perpendicular response. So let's play f5. So perpendicular is by far, I think, the most popular one. Maybe 70 to 80% of the players used to play this, or maybe even higher, and maybe a good 10% to 20% play the diagonal opening. And then almost nobody plays f4 because it gives a huge disadvantage right at the start. And most players who encounter it might, have fair knowledge on how to counter it. So you probably wouldn't want to start off with a -6 opening almost too immediately. So again, over here, since perpendicular is most often played by most players, I would say that f6 is fairly uncommon. So that's the kind of advantage that you get from playing the diagonal opening. So essentially, the diagonal opening starts off with f6, and then yeah, essentially when you play this diagonal card, it is the diagonal opening already. But typically, you would expect that black would immediately jump into e6. Usually, if black were to consider c4 or d3 or even f7 as variations, those would be way too negative and very, very hard to play. Especially, I mean, if you want to try these moves on a blitz game, that's fine. By all means, go ahead. But if you want to attempt it at the World Othello Championship, where your opponent has abundance of time to actually think through their moves, it's probably not a wise option to pick any of these options. So you can safely assume that e6 would be played, and you would then play either d6 or f4, which are both symmetrically, I guess symmetrically. I mean, rotationally symmetrical, essentially, at least along this main diagonal. So, regardless of where you start your move, the diagonal opening always ends up in the same shape, at least for the first two moves, or two moves on each side of the player. So let's play d6. So essentially, that's the starting of the diagonal opening. So that's the initial sequence. I would say that this is very checkerboarding prone and very edge play prone. So if you're good at checkerboarding, you're good at edge play, you're good at managing all these, by all means, the diagonal opening might be for you. And I would say that there has been an increasing trend of players playing the diagonal opening. I would say that Japanese players still mostly play perpendicular, but the most recent world champion in 2019, Mr. Akihiro Takahashi, he plays the diagonal opening very, very well. So I think the first time when he attended a World Othello Championship in 2017, he probably surprised most people with his diagonal opening power. And he managed to do very, very well. And I believe Mr. Ben Seeley from the United States also plays the diagonal opening very, very well. And it's almost amazing that he started off as a perpendicular player and managed to kind of mold himself into a diagonal player. I myself have tried it with probably very mediocre results, I guess, or without much success. So it's always very, very challenging to commit yourself to play a diagonal opening, especially when you're already so kind of deeply ingrained with the perpendicular opening and fairly confident in that one. So let's talk about the disadvantage about the diagonal opening. There are many, many variations to manage because once you play out this sequence, look at this. Black is able to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 different moves. So that kind of means that you have to be well versed in 8 different branch openings. Essentially, when you play the diagonal opening, you're basically kind of handing the menu over to your opponent. Hey, you're saying that be my guest. Choose any of these 8 branch openings. I'll be able to play it fairly well against you. So you have to know so many of these sub branches, so it's very, very challenging to play the diagonal opening unless you're really, really experienced and really confident about it. If not, the perpendicular opening for white tends to be a little easier to manage per se, I guess. So it's some openings against the diagonal could be really really hard to follow up, and you have to go very very deep in book in order to try to keep up. So I would recommend this for advanced players and above. If you don't have a huge abundance of experience in either of perpendicular and diagonal opening, I would say that the diagonal opening is probably worth investing your time to look into this. Yeah, to basically try it. And given that it's fairly uncommon, you could have a little bit of a surprise factor. So I believe that Taiwanese players are also playing diagonal. Almost most Taiwanese players that I've run into actually plays the diagonal opening, probably for this reason as well, since that is fairly uncommon. It's I guess mentally when I play as a black, when I meet a diagonal player, it might be a little bit more out of my comfort zone. Or I to be honest, I've tried every single branch of these openings, and that in general not very easy to play for most of them. So I would say that fair bit is also counterintuitive for black, but it kind of worked both ways. So it really depends on which opening you try. So here on out, we're going to be covering each of these diagonal opening variations, each of these 8 main branches of openings. Of course, I'm not going to, I mean, X square is an opening, but it's more of, just experimental. You probably wouldn't want to give up -20 advantage right from the start unless you're really, really very confident or you just want to challenge yourself. So, other than that, we'll be covering the 8 main branches over here of openings. So, so I hope you like the next few episodes that are coming up, and I'll see you in the next few episodes. Goodbye.